Stop and smell the flowers if you like to climb the trees.
So firstly, I take my neckband and I join it into a loop or into a round using the required seam allowance. So on this particular pattern, it's 5/8. So I've lined up the edge of my fabric with the 5/8 mark on my serger, and I'm just going to whiz straight down. Most patterns will now call for you to fold your seam, your band, wrong sides together and press, and then pin the raw edges to the raw edges of the neckline. My trick is I serge these raw edges together before I do that. Let me show you how I set it up on the overlocker. So I folded my neckband so that it's wrong sides together. You can see the seam here. And then just below the seam, because there's quite a lot of bulk here, I line up these two little marks on my foot of my serger. So this is the two little marks that line up with the needles, and I put them right on the very, very edge of my neckband, so that when I start to overlock, all I will do is sew a very thin line of stitching right on the edge here, and actually my overlocking will hang off the edge of the fabric. It won't cut anything. So let me get started and I'll show you. So you can see as I'm sewing, I'm lining up these raw edges, I'm putting them together, and I'm just stitching right along the very edge with the overlocker. And when I go to the back here, you'll be able to see what's coming out. So you can see all of my actual overlocking is just hanging off the edge here. It's just loose, and that my needles are going down right on the very, very edge of this neckband. Bearing in mind, when you stitch this neckband in, you're either going to stitch it in at 3/8 or 5/8, depending on the pattern. So you're going to be stitching either here or here. So all of this overlocking is going to get cut off when you stitch it in for a second time. So what that's done is given you a really nice stretchy cuff. The reason I do it on the overlocker and not on a sewing machine is because the overlocker is obviously designed for jersey. It means we're not going to lose any of the stretch. So when we're easing in the neckband, it makes it much easier to ease in and set in. You're not killing any of the stretch with a straight stitch or even with a zigzag stitch, which could pop out. You can do it on the sewing machine though if you don't have an overlocker, but just stitch right at the very, very edge. So we've now got a really perfect neckband that when we've positioned into our garment, I'll show you how to sew in. Once you've clipped your neckband in or pinned your neckband in, however you do, with your raw edges lined up, I'll just show you before I put it on the overlocker where I sew. So for me, I'm going to line up the needles of my overlocker. This needs to be sewn at 5/8. So I'm going to be sewing about here roughly. So I'm going to line up the needles of my overlocker, and I'm going to have a look and see where my presser foot comes. But I would imagine my presser foot edge is going to sit right along the edge of this existing overlocking here. So I know that if I follow that line with the edge of my presser foot, I'm going to be leaving an equal distance of binding at the top when it flicks up. And for me, that is what is most important. What I don't like is a neckband that's uneven. So this distance from the fold to the edge of the garment needs to be the same for me. So I don't worry too much about what's going on from this edge to here. I worry about how much is left there. So it's probably easier if I line it up on my overlocker just to show you. So I can see that the edge of my presser foot is running along the edge of my stitches right here, and I can see I've got a nice probably couple of mil running along the edge here from the fold. So as long as I keep this distance the same, and as long as I keep the edge of my presser foot on these stitches, I'm going to get a nice even neckband. So there you have it, a nice even neckband. Yes, I know none of these stripes match up, they were never intended to, but you have got an equal distance all the way round, and it's now up to you whether you want to top stitch down your seam allowance just here or just leave it be. And I quite often give it a good press, try it on, and then make that decision. But I hope that's helped.